Welcome to Roundhill Radio. Through our conversations, we discover the holy and the ordinary, look for moments of grace and peace, and redefine what we talk about. We talk about faith. Good morning, Ed.
Good morning, Leslie.
How you doing?
I'm well.
Happy Thanksgiving.
And happy Thanksgiving to you.
We were talking about it's a short week around here.
Yep.
As we prepare for the festivities.
Short but packed.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I feel like in
Dense.
church world, short week does not, it's not necessarily
Doesn't equate to a...
relaxing week.
Exactly. Usually more intense.
Yes. We'll make it through.
Yes, we will.
As we always do. We're off the heels of we had a music Sunday yesterday
Beautiful.
in church where we record on Mondays. And so I'm the word dopey comes to mind. I feel like I've used the sort of higher intelligence of the music and the details and all the things. And I'm walking around this morning like, someone hand me
In
coffee.
a haze.
Yeah, haze is much
Yep.
kinder than what I was about to say about myself. But we wanted to, we've been talking in church about gratitude in our sermon series of what matters most, and gratitude was on the list. And we thought, hey, let's put it in November, which makes rather obvious sense.
I think so.
So that's been our theme, which is I think been really, really fun. I know gratitude as a sort of overarching concept has been around for a while, and we hear about it. The phrase "attitude of gratitude"
Right.
comes to mind.
Yep.
So what does that even mean anymore? I guess would be my first question. Like, how we're looking at it now, but how are we finding? Are we finding anything? Are you finding anything new in it?
Yeah, I'm always asking myself that question, right? about everything.
Sure.
But about these virtues that we talk about, because in one sense, they seem incredibly obvious, right? And I think that's part of the challenge with them is not to let them be too obvious, but to explore, to ask, what is there that we maybe haven't seen before? But before I say anything about that, I do want to make a comment about your observation that gratitude, it's an interesting thing to think about. So how long has gratitude been around?
Oh.
Right? Because we don't really think, has there always been gratitude? Is it woven into us, or have we learned it? And I'm just thinking that in the book of Psalms, which was probably created over a very long period of time. But you think about it, most of the poems in the book of Psalms, which is located in the Old Testament, were probably written around 2,500, 2,600 years ago, maybe longer, and than that. And so gratitude features in those Psalms very predominantly. So it is something that's been woven into our lives for a very long time, and undoubtedly for a very long time before that. But it is interesting to think about a world where it wasn't. And that, how was it learned? What was it about human evolution that suddenly sparked in us the need to say thank you?
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I hadn't really thought about that before.
Yeah.
But because there's something about gratitude and its power that it's an antidote to despair. And it's always available to us. It seems now that we take it for granted that it's almost an innate capacity, that we're almost born with it.
It's like a automatic response.
Right. And so imagine a world where that wasn't the case, where it had to be learned. Really explicitly, and where it wasn't widely disseminated. What was there before it? It's just a fascinating thing to think about.
Yeah. I'm picturing in my mind cave people and someone bringing back some magnificent feast, perhaps a deer, and sharing it. And to me, the automatic response is some sort of like appreciation. Like appreciation feels related to gratitude.
Yep.
And thinking about like what it would be like if that was, I feel like the opposite of gratitude is maybe expectation or something about on that way of like, well, yeah, of course you did that because that was the thing you were expected to do, and I'm not going to appreciate or feel grateful for, obviously in terms of action. It's sort of interesting to think about, like it feels cold without gratitude, without
Disconnected.
Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm beginning to think, just thinking out loud here, that what we call worship may have at its root some very basic desire or longing to say thank you to something larger than ourselves. So not only the one coming in with the food for the clan or the tribe or the family, but how do we give thanks for the one who is beyond it all, but within it all? The world seems to be only possible because of that one. How do you give thanks?
Right.
And I remember talking with a person once in my life who, she said, part of my life is about finding ways to say thank you. So it's sort of a conscious decision to make sure that she holds in regard those people who've impacted her in a positive way, and not to let that go by the wayside.
Sure.
So worship itself in its most ancient root, as a rite or a ritual, may be the effort to express that gratitude, in a transcendent way.
Yeah. That sort of feels gratitude as expression for life, for blessings, for abundance.
Yep.
So that sort of expression of appreciation for that.
I think if anyone's ever been in a situation where, maybe it's a close call in life, and then you just find yourself closing your eyes and saying, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
That could have been so different.
Yeah.
And it just wells up. Right? And you don't even know who you're saying thank you to exactly. Some people may, but some people may just say it.
Yeah.
And I think that's so fascinating.
I have a little anecdote about that.
Oh, okay.
So yesterday morning, I got here crack o' dawn because I had so much to do before the musicians arrived and things started up. I had some copies to make and some things to organize and chairs to move and all those things. Of course, the string player still beat me here because instrumentalists are stunningly punctual.
Okay, good.
They're incredible. So they still beat me here. So I had like arms full of orchestral music, these big envelopes, and I had my iPad and I had all this stuff. And I had my iPad on, I have 2 cases for it. This is important. 2 cases for it. One where the Apple Pencil like clicks in really great, and one where it kind of is magnetic-ish. So I had it like stacked of stuff. So I get to the piano.
I can feel it coming.
Yeah. Oh, get ready. And then I set down everything, and the Apple Pencil, like a missile, goes boing into the piano. Between the strings, between the hammers, and it's sticking out like mocking me. But it's in such a way that my little stinky little fingers, I can't reach it. I can't get it out. And I just stare at it like, okay, so that's how this is going to go, is it? So I'm just like,
welcome to the day.
Sure. Yes. Like I wasn't even like, oh man. I was like, okay.
And who says that inanimate things don't have consciousness?
Yeah. It had something to say. So I'm like going to the office and walking around, and I look on our colleague Roland's desk, and as if it was glowing from an inner light was the perfectly shaped set of pliers.
Of course.
Just, like on the center of his desk, like boink.
Thank you.
As if it had a tag that says, for Leslie.
To be used for when Apple Pencils.
So I grabbed it. I was like, oh, could it be? Could it be? And I walk over and I was like, I was picturing it then, because of course it was like the pointed end up. So if I grabbed it too hard, it would have slipped and gone further down. So I like grab it, I pull the whole thing out, and I hold it up like my prize. And I looked to the heavens and I was like, thank you.
There you go.
Oh my gosh. So I just looked at the roof.
That's a gratitude moment.
Oh, buddy. Because, I didn't care about the Apple Pencil. I cared about not breaking the piano.
Yes.
Because if I had tried to play the piano with it still in there, the chances of breaking a hammer were pretty high at that point. And I was just like, okay. Okay. Well, the adrenaline had gotten
good example
revved up for the morning. And we had some outpouring of gratitude. And this was all before 8 a.m.
Oh, I love it. I love it. It's always fun to know the backstory.
That's great. So I just was like, just the perfectly placed, like parallel to the desk, pliers just like boink right there. I was like, thank you, Roland, for not putting those away.
No kidding. Oh my gosh.
I have to remember to tell him that story. So yes, sometimes it just comes out from you as if the next thing you have to do is express gratitude to the universe or whatever.
Exactly.
That it's you can't. I couldn't have stopped in that moment, just like gone on with my day.
Yep.
You have to celebrate. You have to say thank you.
Well, I love the phrase, we have to, because I think that's what it feels like.
Sometimes, yeah.
That we have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
That if we haven't, then you're back at what you're talking about earlier, the disconnection.
Yeah.
Like, I just expect this to be.
Yeah.
And that's not to live in recognition of the goodness coming our way from resources we could not have supplied on our own.
But I know sometimes it's not as easy. It doesn't flow. It doesn't like spring up, just in everyday life,
right. Right.
So you'll hear in sermons like people, ministers being like, so be more grateful or have, express gratitude. And you're like,
practice gratitude.
Okay. So how do we do that?
Exactly. Well, we have a little thought, right? We're going to suggest a little thought. You're so right. And boy, have I done that my share of times over the years, Yes, practice gratitude, everyone. And
I wasn't telling on you.
Your life will be better. That's okay. I can take it. Well, I love to read these books about habit formation. They're really popular these days.
They are. They're big.
There's a lot of them.
There's a lot,
right?
Yeah.
Which is interesting because clearly we have some issues with forming habits, and we need advice and guidance.
Sure.
But there is one very simple way of creating a habit that I've liked and have used with some success. And that is that when you're forming a habit, whether it's to be more intentionally grateful, or to do 10 push-ups during the day, or whatever it might be, it's your thing, is to find an activity that you're already doing every single day that you really don't think about very much. Could be eating breakfast, eating lunch, could be taking the dog for a walk. It could be, I always like to look out the window at 8:15 to see, what's going on down the street, whatever it is. And you attach the habit you want to form to that anchor.
Okay.
So those things that we're doing all the time, pretty much without thinking, those become the anchors. And we sort of take them for granted. And instead of taking them for granted, we can decide to say, you know what, I'm going to take my habit and I'm going to link it to it. So I'm going to eat breakfast, and then I have a little, maybe promise to myself that as soon as I have put the breakfast bowl in the sink or in the dishwasher, I'm going to give thanks for 5 things. And then it's done. And before you know it, you're ready to move on to the next thing. It hasn't really taken that much energy because you're already used to putting out energy for that thing you've just done.
Right.
You're just putting something to piggyback on it.
Yeah.
And I really like that. And I think that we don't talk enough about the practical side of how to make the habit real.
Yeah.
And that's a very simple one that can be done.
I like that.
And I will just add a quick one around it that people also say the more that you can make visible the habit that you want to develop, the better off you are. So if you want to learn a language, it's not a bad idea to put a language book out, that reminds you.
Yeah.
And I've also used that with pretty good success. So it's just, you sit down at your normal place and maybe there is, flashcards because of the vocabulary you want to learn. But maybe there's, Susan, my wife, brought me a couple of years ago this beautiful little gratitude journal, and actually with some gratitude note cards.
Oh, neat.
And so I kept that out. So every time I would sit at my desk, I couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
It was right there.
Yeah.
And that little prompt was enough to keep me engaged. So those are 2 things. It's making it visible and then anchoring it to something you're already doing. And you can do this with anything, but I think with gratitude as well, so that I think our goal is we want it to be second nature. We don't want to necessarily it's good to be intentional about it as well. And even to do it when we don't feel like doing it. And that's why recently when we were talking about gratitude, I think there's so much, the world is looking on at Israel and Gaza right now with, such dismay, concern about the people who are living there. But that prompted me, because we were in the month of gratitude, to think about all of the people there right now, the physicians, the lorry drivers, the negotiators who are working tirelessly to bring food where it's needed, to gain the release of hostages, to attend to the wounds of children. We tend not to think about those people because the news itself is so horrific. And yet there's a tremendous amount of energy being expended every day in actually keeping people alive, bringing food to people who need it, securing the release of hostages because there are families so desperately worried about them. I don't want to lose track of those people who are doing those things. And I want to be thankful because I'm not in a position to do anything in those areas. Right. But they are, and thank God that they are, and we want to try to send our best encouragement to them however we can do that. So I think that's another way that's about being more intentional. We may not feel like doing that all the time, right? Especially when the news feels heavy and we feel ourselves kind of sinking into it. No, this can kind of help us to bring our way out of it and, to find the stories, however few they may be, where hope seems to be springing up.
That feels like gratitude as a lens. Gratitude is putting your gratitude glasses and seeing the world.
Yeah, great connection.
In a way that we can, more easily see the good, more easily appreciate and acknowledge the good things. I'm reading a sort of a sciencey fiction book. It's a fiction book that has science in it. And they're talking about different cameras that you can see different light.
Oh, wow.
So like the infrared lights and all these different, and it's made me think about it of like, if we switch our cameras over to gratitude, switch our cameras over to seeing, and acknowledging and appreciating and contributing to the positive, we could probably add to it and start to, making a positive impact because we are able to see what's already there and contribute to it, even if it's a positive outlook or a positive word to a friend, or to me it's optimism feels sometimes silly. Sometimes I feel I'm a naturally rather optimistic person, and I tend to reframe things in a positive way to the degree that it is annoying to other people. So I'm really into this conversation because I'm like, yes, come hang out on but here's a silver lining. I'm great with silver linings. I will give you 3 for anything. But I think it's helpful to reframe things in that way. And we're like, well, at least.
Well, I think that is a great thought. And I would connect it with Music Sunday because I had this thought during Music Sunday, actually.
Tell me.
When we're sitting there, of course, I'm absorbing all of this beautiful music, and I can even connect it with what we're doing right now in the podcast. When we're engaged in things like that, we are holding out hope. Because the language in the music that we typically sing about is very hopeful, right? It's moving us towards themes of resurrection, reconciliation, forgiveness. These are virtues and values without which humanity will not survive. And so, in that time, in that 1 hour, it may seem astoundingly insignificant compared to what's going on, right, in other parts of the world. And yet we are the holders of hope in those moments. Or if we're having a conversation this morning, we're all listening in and we're thinking about our listeners and we're all on to this topic. We're also not thinking about, the way that forces might be arrayed to diminish life in this world, whether that's happening politically or militarily or however that's going on. So I think it's an incredibly important thing, to be doing this. And then you do start to see the world differently, which I think is what I love your image about, accessing different kinds of light. And that takes a little bit of work and effort to do that.
Sometimes I feel like it's very easy to feel that negative things or certain, certain things in the world are inevitable.
Yeah.
You know, that destruction can feel inevitable, that
Mhm.
war can feel inevitable when humans have the power to, you know, different humans in different positions of power have the authority to say no
Mhm.
and to
Mhm.
say that that's not the world that
Yeah.
we want to be creating together.
Mhm.
And I think that I feel powerless sometimes that inevitability can feel powerless. And I feel like accessing the lens of gratitude, accessing the lens of acknowledging the good and the positive helps fight away that darkness a little bit and helps feel like we actually are extremely powerful as fellow humans
Yes.
to one another.
Yes. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like that sort of, being drawn into those thoughts of the inevitability. There's a seductive quality about it. You know, we sort of can get drawn in and stuck there. And I hear that kind of inevitability thinking all the time about politics.
Sure.
You'll never change their minds.
What's the point?
Right. They've always been that way. The Middle East has always been a kind of a battleground. What do you, there's always that way of dismissing the possibility of any hope. And I think that's what we're called to work against. And so through our conversations, through our gatherings, through our service, all of those are ways of saying, I would say, a very persistent and resilient no to all of that. And because there are voices arrayed towards the hopeful side, but they're not getting a lot of play right now. You really have to dig deep, I think, in the media to find those kinds of voices. You know, they're there, but they're not readily apparent. So that becomes our calling. And I think you've used the phrase before, to get louder about that. In a way that's not, obtrusive or aggressive, but just to say, no, there's an alternative voice here.
Yeah.
This isn't the only way to look at the world. And, in the world of coaching, and I mean not so much like athletic coaching, but personal one-on-one coaching,
Yeah.
there's a phrase that's used. What part of what coaches do is to help clients identify what's called their self-limiting beliefs. And I would almost call these world-limiting beliefs, like the world's never going to get better, or that situation's never going to improve, or we've been trying at that before and we've always failed. What makes you think it'll be any different?
Yeah.
Those are both self-limiting and world-limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
Gratitude leaves no space for that, right? It dissolves that feeling, and then it kind of gently pushes our little ship out off away from the shore, out into the deeper waters.
It feels like it fights against those words, the never, always, impossible.
Right.
It can make those things feel possible and feel like I have potential. Because I think of all the things you've achieved already. Think about the person you were or the life you had, and now where you have come and things you've learned, even if you weren't where you expected to be.
That's right.
I love that idea that it fights against the never and the, this idea that we can be limiting ourselves by not acting on gratitude and not using that as our push off point and the wind in our sails, to continue your metaphor.
Right. And it might be as simple as saying, I'm just grateful that I don't have to think that way. I'm grateful that I don't have to limit myself in those ways. Now, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing or how I'm going to get there, but I'm grateful that I think that God has a way of seeing the world in terms of possibility, and that there's a resurrection power that's alive and at large in the world. And I don't understand how that works, but I'm going to give myself to it. I mean, to me, it seems like a really healthy option, when there are so many other alternatives that could diminish who we are and our capacity.
Well, I am grateful for you, Ed.
And likewise.
Grateful for this podcast, grateful for these conversations. And we are certainly grateful for you to be joining us in them. And please join the conversation at roundhillradio.org. Round Hill Radio is brought to you by the friends and members of Round Hill Community Church. For more information, please visit roundhillradio.org.